Okay.
Camera's on, go.
All right.
Okay, so I'm fascinated with what you were doing at the time. Can you give us a really, describe who you're working for and what they did?
Back in '69, I was working for Tempo. It was a think tank. It was a spin-off from RAND, a company that was looking at future aircraft in Santa Monica. And then one of the leaders of RAND moved to Santa Barbara to attract some brains. And he had a contract with General Electric Company to look at the future 25 years from today. And he called it Tempo, and called it Technical Management Planning Operation. And he hired probably 500 people. We had most of downtown, at all the major buildings, and we would study the future. And our clients were countries, cities, corporations, and then we got into NASA, and the future of whatever, whether it was transportation or whether it was population in South America, or it might be how to build a home in Algeria. And as a matter of fact, I went down there to help them build adobe homes because all they had was oil and dirt. So we could mix a little oil with dirt and make a very permanent home. That's the best use for oil I've ever seen. Stabilized brick. And maybe that's not too good because you should once you build an adobe, it should melt back into the earth, and then you could build a new structure 100 years from that point of view. So anyhow, so I worked for Tempo and as an art director, and when all these PhDs would come through with these concepts and ideas about the future for this country or the business or the corporation or the government, then I would visualize them. I would draw pictures, and then my boss would make a presentation to a company or a country and use slides and use my artwork. For instance, you might say, well, what would it be like to live on the moon? And what would it be like to go up there for an evening to watch a ballet dance on the moon? No gravity, right, or very little gravity. So we did these far out ideas, and as far as computers are concerned today, back then we didn't have computers, but Tempo, we had the first dozen computers, and they were the size of refrigerators. Now you can put all that information in the palm of your hand. So we had the first generation of computers, and GE and Tempo utilized them, and we put them in we tried them out in public schools, and other things like that. So we were an advanced corporation. That's where I came from. I'm a strong environmentalist, so my relationship to GE was interesting because they'd be talking about developing an electric knife, and I'd say, let's develop something solar, you know. But you know, I'm just a little guy in a big corporation.
So tell us about what happened when how you heard about it, where you were, the 1969 Santa Barbara.
Okay, I was in 1969. I was working on the 4th floor of the El Paseo building that overlooked the ocean from where I sat. And I have a friend named Dick Smith, who was a reporter for the news press, the local newspaper. He was flying over the channel this particular day, and he saw a big blowout going underneath a platform in the channels. It was Platform A, the Union Platform A. And he saw this big platform. He phoned me from his airplane and said, there's a big blowout going out here, bud. What are we going to do about it? And I said, right away, I got so angry, I just screamed out, we got to get oil out. And my boss was in the next office, and he said, hey, get oil out, GOO, good name. So we went with GOO, and we said, well, what can we do, you know, to stop the oil drilling in our beautiful, pristine ocean down in Santa Barbara? So we said, well, we'll get a petition out to all the people in Santa Barbara, and we'll have them sign it, and we'll send it to our government. We were so naive, we thought we could, you know, send it to our city council, send it to our superintendent, and the state, and they would stop oil drilling off our Santa Barbara. Well, we didn't realize that the platforms were in federal waters we couldn't touch. But we did go to the state with our petitions after we had several thousands of petition signers, and they did respond. The state did eventually remove, I think it was Proposition 20. They did remove all the platforms from the state waters, which is a great success for GOO. And so that's how it started. And then ever since that time, we've been fighting the offshore oil, the federal waters, and that's hard to touch. They're so big and so involved, and they're so, I mean, let's say that the oil companies, I think there's about 100 oil companies, lobbyists for every senator and congressman out there, so they have a huge influence on the federal government. So our federal government doesn't have the courage to back down from the oil company. The oil company is so big and so powerful in our country that we're going to have oil for a long time until we get smart enough to get switched over to oil, to solar. I'm sorry, to solar.
You said earlier that while you hadn't been involved in a lot of the cleanup itself, you had contact with the birds. Tell us about your contact with the birds on the beach.
Well, yes, we couldn't do much as far as cleaning up the oil because it was such a huge, massive problem that we could do small things like pick up birds along the beaches, and we picked up hundreds of birds. Not a single bird in those days survived. Even though we had techniques to clean their feathers, but none of them survived. There were thousands of birds lost, mostly grebes. And that was, you'd stack them up, as high as you could stack up a stack of birds there as high as you are. And then we'd try and take them off to wildlife care people. They couldn't save them, so all the birds died. And then there were dolphins exposed to it. There were sea lions, I think San Miguel Island, where all the sea lions hung out. A lot of those got oil and goo on them. I don't know if we lost any with that, but we probably did. And so we did what we could to protect the animals. That's the best we could do. But what we could do as individuals was to protest. So we protested with our petitions to the governments. We had all kinds of events where we would block the Stearns Wharf from the large oil companies who were trying to taking their oil derricks. I mean, taking their supplies, the oil derricks off our city-owned wharf. No more fishing off our wharf. It was all given to the oil companies, and there was no. We call it the park a plank park because it's a wooden platform, for fishing. And there's no more use of recreation from our wharf, and so we blocked the large oil tankers from coming onto the wharf. That was one of the events. And then we would send off little bottles of oil that was collected out of our harbor to every government official there was, so they could see for themselves what we were dealing with. And I can recall seeing the oil come ashore a few days later from the oil blowout, and it was really weird. All this, we always listened and smelled this beautiful ocean, and now it became still and black, and it was thick. It was like 6 inches of goo, and you couldn't go in the ocean anymore. And we thought it was all over for us. We stood there and cried. I hear grown men and women sitting there crying because they lived in Santa Barbara because the beach was half of their life, and now you couldn't see it. And we thought we'll never be able to go swimming again in the ocean or use it. But eventually, years later, it cleared up. It's still today, you find gooed birds. I don't know where they probably find it offshore, because I know that the oil derricks, that one that blew out in '69, still leaks. Last time I heard, they have tents in the bottom that collect the oil from the fractured bottom, because it's mostly stone out there, I guess, rock. bottom, and so it's fractured the bottom, and they still collect the oil and ship it, or it's run through a pipe to Ventura. But we see after effects from it all the time. If the wind changes, or the tides change, we have oil on our beaches. You can come down to the beach almost any time of the year and find some oil or goo, and I'm sure it's from the platforms. Of course, the oil companies will tell you it's from a natural seepage, and we have that too, but it's mostly gas, and very little oil comes out of them. But I mean, Mother Nature has had seepage in the ocean for thousands and millions of years, but that's fine. As long as Mother Nature did it, it's okay. But when man intrudes on Mother Nature, we make some big mistakes.
Tell us how you
Cut.
state.
I need to change video, please.
Okay.